welcome to Spoiler Beast Theater, the podcast that doesn't give a shit about spoilers. We just want to talk about the movies. My name is Megan Kearns. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a contributor to Edge Media Network and a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association.
My name is Dave Riedel. I write about movies. My pronouns are he, him, and I am a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association as well.
My name is Evan Crean. My pronouns are he, him. I am co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association and co-author of your 80s movie guide to better living.
Yeah, you are.
You are.
Truth.
Hashtag facts. Hashtag truth facts. That would be overkill.
Yes. But not for a hashtag, because you can never overkill with hashtags.
Hashtag overkill, hashtag.
Nice. Hashtag nice. So in addition to talking about hashtags, we're going to be talking about some movies. But before we tell you what's on the docket this week, we want to share that if you're a patron, check out this week's bonus episode, exclusive audio, where we talk all about Eve with one of my favorite actresses, Bette Davis. Yay! And if you're not a patron, consider joining maybe. So this week, we're going to be talking about The Nighthouse, Confetti, and Demonic. So let's kick things off with Demonic.
Let's see. What can I say?
Well, first, hang on. I know you have a lot. So this is a Canadian sci-fi horror film. It is written and directed by Neil Blomkamp, and it stars Carly Pope and Chris William Martin, Michael J. Rogers, Natalie Bolt. It is about a woman who is estranged from her mother, who is incarcerated because she went on a murder rampage. Her mother is in a coma, and she's at this tech hospital place and
experimental medical, private medical
thank you.
Facility.
Thank you. Yes, and so within this facility, she essentially becomes like a video game avatar and goes into her mother's mind and can communicate with her mother that way. And this unleashes some demons, and there's exorcism, and so anyway, that's the very broad overview. What did you guys think of it?
I think it was demonically bad. I think there's a whole lot of like dressed up bullshit for a very stock, predictable, and boring exorcism story.
Yeah. I mean,
agreed.
So my consistent issue with Neil Blomkamp in terms of his filmmaking is I know he comes from a production design background. And so I feel like in these movies I've seen, I always really appreciate the concepts, and I appreciate the art direction. This one, not as much because there's not as much to cling on to, but I think of things like Chappie and Elysium. And I feel like there's always this really strong concept and really strong production design at the center of it, but the writing is always a weak point. And I think that comes into sharper relief in this movie where there's even less production design and it's more based on this idea, which is some type of weird mashup of sci-fi horror, but also with a weird religious bent that doesn't ever quite come to fruition, or it doesn't ever get fleshed out in any kind of meaningful way.
It doesn't make sense at all. I mean, there are so many plot holes, and it's like, well, there was the demon that got into the mom and the building she went to. Okay. And they're like, but we think it was built on some place that was unholy. Okay. That's never explored. They mention it, never explored again.
Well, I mean, we saw that was the horror documentary we saw was the folk horror documentary, right? Where they talked about how Indian burial grounds are not a thing.
Right.
No, they're not. And it's also super racist and a racist trope.
They didn't say this was an Indian burial. They said it was some kind of,
they did not.
It was some kind of unsacred. There was something else that, basically they substituted whatever it was for, quote, Indian burial ground, unquote.
Right. So,
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It felt like a weak premise. I think for me, one of the most obnoxious things was the continuity of the main character's hair.
See, if you're noticing things like that, you're watching a bad movie.
Well, the main
Correct.
character has this pinkish hair, and it goes from being very bright to being very faded over the course of not a very long amount of time. And it kind of goes back and forth in different shades. And I feel like it's something that always bothers me every time I watch The Omen, of seeing Gregory Peck's hair in various different states of continuity. And so seeing it in this movie just irks me once again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, especially, right. I mean, and those kinds of hair continuity things sometimes they happen, what have you. But if you're going to have a character who has such vibrant hair, it's going to be that much more noticeable. So don't do it unless you're going to really stay on top of it. You know, it's ridiculous.
But there are just all kinds of things that don't make sense about this. First of all, they've set up this weird motion capture. So basically, like, if you've seen a behind the scenes documentary about how they made The Matrix, it looks like that, except that instead of being a green screen, you know, there's some guys standing with a computer in the background. And then when she goes into this rendering, it looks like fucking rotoscoping sent through a Lawnmower Man filter. I mean, it's just the dumbest looking. It just looks stupid. It's like, it looks like if,
it's so bad.
It looks like if Take On Me were in color, but done really, really poorly. You know?
Yeah, because that's a striking music video.
Yeah,
it's
right.
Even though it's in the 80s, it's still very striking today. And this looks like garbage. This looks like the worst video game I've ever played ever. Yeah. It's terrible.
It looks kind of like the late 90s, early aughts CG. It looks like it could be like a Sega CD game, or like one of those early like N64 games where it just looks really boxy and glitchy. And when the character is standing still, you can see the front of her face through the back of her head.
Yeah.
Which actually happens in the movie. And I know maybe that's kind of like the effect, but it still looks terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks right. And that's the thing too, is it doesn't look like, oh, hey, we're trying to evoke, you know, the early aughts, late 90s video games. It just looks like shit.
I'm going to start with, I think Neil Blomkamp's card just needs to be revoked. Like, no more directing movies. You clearly got lucky with the first one. You know, that was just, you know, you got lucky.
I'm going to say you can direct, but you can't write.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to write. Someone else needs to.
I was going to say, I've only seen District 9, so I can't speak to the other films. But based on this film, he can't direct because there is so much atrociously bad acting in
there's
this.
some
it's
bad acting in this movie. But also, I mean, that also could just be, you know, what was available to him. Who knows? But
true, but that is part of the director's job, is to get great performances.
Sure. But I think what kills this movie more than anything, like I said, is the fact that who gives a shit about this dumb exorcism story? Second of all, the fact that the actual demon or whatever it is looks like something. It looks like if, you know, one of the Warner Brothers animators had come in hungover in the 50s, he would have drawn a bird that looked like this and been like, hey, look at this fucking bird. And then that would have been the end of it, you know?
I actually think it looks like one of the monsters from Beetlejuice when they're trying to scare people.
The one where like Alec Baldwin pulls his face and sticks his eyes in his mouth.
Yes.
Yeah.
With a little bit of Skeksis from Dark Crystal.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, the Skeksis. I love the Skeksis.
Right. It's got this creepy bird face that also kind of looks like a plague doctor mask. It's
yes.
But just there are so many things in this movie that are just dumb. Like, now you can, if I missed any of this, you please fill me in, because I found this movie so dull that I mostly kept it on in the background while I did other shit. So, because it just sucked from the beginning. Like when they got into the simulation, I'm like, this is what it looks like. Next. So, how did they get the mom out of how did the priests? So first of all, they're priests posing as doctors. Okay, fine. How did they get her out? How did they get mom out of the prison? Did they ever explain that? Like some fucking doctors just walk in and say, we want to do experimental medical things on this woman. Oh, sure. Here, sign her out. She's yours.
Right.
What is that? Yeah. You know, second of all, they say explicitly, you won't be able to talk to us in the simulation.
Right.
And then she talks to them in like the second time she goes in, and they're like, oh, Carly, blah, blah, blah.
She can talk to them, but they can't talk to her.
She hears them, though.
supposedly.
There's a point where she definitely hears what they say because she answers one of them. So, like, anyway.
Oh, I thought she didn't hear, but okay.
So there's that. There's
Yeah.
the, just the when the best friend shows up in the middle of the night, all like weird and drunk or whatever, and she's like, hey, I'm going to show you something scary. Why would your
Sam,
friend, who has never done anything like that before ever, as far as the screenplay tells us, go ahead and do that now? Why? Why would that happen? And why would you just sit there and watch it? You know? And I'm so sick of movies that are just like, is it real or is it a dream? Is it real or is it a dream? Fuck you, pick one. You know?
I didn't think there was any question as to whether they were dreams or not. They just all seemed like too weird to be real.
But the thing is though, she wakes up and she's like, well, it's like, the friend comes over and does the weird shit that she does and chases her into the bathroom or wherever it is. I don't even know where she chases her. And then she comes out of the stupor or the dream or wherever. And then she says, Martin, I think I had this dream where Sam or Casey or Edwina, whatever her name was Sam was trying to kill me with the bird mask or whatever. And it's like, what? Ugh. And then they go, and then the creepiest thing in this movie, by the way, is the fact that the priests, the agents of God, stuck hidden cameras in her home. That's the creepiest thing in this movie.
That was a creepy revelation.
It's like, not only are we priests, but we're also breaking the law, and we're pervs, which is also breaking the law. So there's that. And then they take the person who's been possessed back to the site of possession. I'm sorry, I'm not a theologian, but that seems really, really irresponsible. So
right.
I just...
Well, I mean, also there's this idea that there's some type of magical arrowhead or knife that they need to stab stab whoever the possessed person is, or stab the demon. And there's literally no explanation as to why that's a thing. It's not like this specific possession is tied to this arrowhead or this knife, or all possessions are terminated. Like, it's literally, they're just like, here's the thing you're supposed to do. You stab the demon, you kill it. Okay.
Yeah.
Don't ask any more questions. Okay, bye.
And don't forget this part. Like, the whole time they're like, Carly, the demon wants you. Clearly the demon wants you. And then the demon jumps into like one guy, and then it jumps into another guy. Why couldn't the demon have just the first time she went into the simulation fucking jumped in her? I mean, like, the second simulation, the demon's like standing in the same room she is, And then when it finally gets a chance to jump into her, it's just like, I'll do it half-heartedly so you can stab yourself in the stomach with the knife and then I'll be exorcised. The end. I just... Oh my God, so fucking dumb. I mean, it's just so dumb. It's all so ridiculously stupid. And the way that Neil Blomkamp has failed as a filmmaker is each budget has gotten smaller and each story has gotten dumber. I don't really understand the hate that people seem to have for Chappie. I mean, it's not a good movie, but I don't hate it. At least it has the Antwoord doing weird shit in it, At least it has that. But like Elysium, like, what is that dog shit? That movie sucks. And then this is actually worse. It's amazing. So, Megan, you haven't touched much. How do you feel?
I already shared how I felt.
But I've been...
To me, there's not much to say, even though it's amazing to me, Dave, that you went on that tirade, because I just think the acting is atrocious. I think the writing is atrocious. I think the visual effects are atrocious. I think the story, it makes no sense. I don't care about any of the characters. I was kind of disappointed because the actress who plays Sam is really good on Battlestar Galactica. So it's unfortunate that I actually liked her, but only because of Battlestar Galactica. But this was absolutely torturous to watch. It was just, and the thing, thinking about a small budget as you were talking about it, the thing I was thinking, because it's it's common for horror films to be on small budget, but it's not always so common for indie sci-fi. It's a little bit harder because a lot of sci-fi is big budget, it's tentpole films. We think of, big special effects. But one of my favorite sci-fi films is an incredibly low budget film, and it's a great film, and it's Advantageous by Jennifer Fan, and it's really, really great. And so you don't have to have a big budget to do great sci-fi. And as I was watching this, all I kept thinking was, I could be watching an episode of Black Mirror that would be 10,000 times better than this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, as we've talked about before on the show, when it comes to sci-fi, when you have a limited budget, you just narrow the scope of the story and you can tell a really compelling story. Yep. And this story, it's mostly just murky. It's not even that it's like not narrow enough. It's not well written.
Yeah.
So right.
It's just, that's the problem. It's just,
there's no logic to it. None.
Scatterbrained.
Yeah.
But even aside, and you're absolutely right. You're both right that it's scatterbrained, it's murky, it's illogical, but also who cares?
Yeah.
Like, that's the big thing. Like, if something is illogical, I'll forgive it a lot if I care about the story or if I care about the characters. But if I don't give a shit about what's happening, I'm just going to tear apart the logic of your story. And there is no logic here. And who cares?
And seriously, it's like, once we find out the demon can jump wherever it wants, whenever it wants, why hasn't it done that the whole time? It just doesn't make sense. So it's just, this movie is absolutely, totally, and in all other ways, worthless. That's maybe the lowest I can go. It's like, I can't even believe I spent this. It blows my mind that people make movies this bad. I know that, like, when you're a filmmaker, sometimes you got to roll the dice because it's available now, the money's available now, the cast is available now, I got to go or I can't get it. Who knows when I'll make another project. But I would have fucking skipped this motherfucker. So...
Well, I think what's really weird, too, is this was made mid-pandemic.
Yes, it was.
Like, why? Why not just wait? Like, clearly you needed to work on the story more, so why not just wait and write a better story? It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, call your friend Peter Jackson, who was such a big champion of your first movie, and be like, Pete, I need some help. Write me out of this.
Well, maybe they're not friends.
Maybe they're not. Maybe he's
like, who knows?
Maybe he's like, after Elysium, he's like, I'm out. I don't know.
Like, who knows? Yeah. But yikes. I mean, yeah, I never want to tell someone they shouldn't be making art or shouldn't be making their movie. But I just think this needed a lot more work and better work.
Sure did.
Okay. Do we have any final thoughts before we move on?
Let's move on.
Yeah.
All right. I'm very happy to move on. Okay. So let's talk about Anne Hu's film, Confetti. Would anyone like to talk about the summary for Confetti?
I can't believe how fascinating a 90-minute documentary about making confetti was. That was crazy.
You're so funny.
Yeah, very funny.
Sorry, no. Somebody else can talk about it. I'll read. I have the IMDb thing right in front of me.
Yeah, read the one-sentence summary.
The film centers around a traditional Chinese family who face a number of obstacles after their daughter is diagnosed with dyslexia.
Yeah.
That's very bare bones.
Bare bones, but
it is super bare bones.
But correct. I mean, not, I think it's a little, it's a pretty severe form of dyslexia. It's not just like, there's all different kinds of dyslexia.
Yeah. I don't really feel like it's a severe form of dyslexia because there are a lot of times in the film where people are like, this is possibly fixable, or she's really smart and can go on to do other things. But what I think is really compelling, and I wasn't expecting about this movie, is the story of the mother-daughter relationship, the idea that the mother also suffers from a learning disability, probably also dyslexia, the film seems to portray. And there's this idea of, being an immigrant and trying, going somewhere to try and make a better life and all of the struggles, especially in this particular situation where you have a mom that's like, my daughter cannot get the education she needs in China. It just simply doesn't exist here. So I need to go to the US to have any kind of shot. And then that only shot is to somehow convince this ultra exclusive private school to take my daughter. And I have to literally work 3 jobs just to get a neuropsych evaluation to qualify her to apply to the school.
And then another international student has to drop out for a place to be open for. Don't forget that.
Right.
Yep.
So that's, to me, I think what is the compelling part of the story that I was not necessarily expecting based on the plot summary. I think the plot summary is like, okay, yeah, there's this story about dyslexia. I'm like, okay, that doesn't sound really compelling on paper, but watch it. And then when you get into the story, it's just, I think it's an emotional story about being an immigrant, about a mother-daughter relationship, and I don't know. So then that's for me where I was kind of digging it and getting really into it, especially finding out the backstory, the mom's backstory, and kind of how she related to her daughter's dyslexia.
Yeah, that surprised me a lot. It added a psychological underpinning that I wasn't expecting.
Also, I feel like this movie for a while was kind of circling the white savior narrative. And I was getting a little nervous about where it was going because we haven't mentioned that they moved to the US, and Amy Irving is an author that they move in with, and she helps them and goes along with them and is like their interpreter and their kind of champion throughout this process of finding the right school. And I was worried that it was going to kind of really descend into that, but it kind of switched gears, especially as we learn more about the mother's story.
Right. Megan, what about you?
I was going to ask you, Dave, what do you think?
I don't know how good this movie is, but I was really moved by it. I thought that the parents in particular, the little girl's parents, were both just great. Particularly the mother, who you see the bulk of the story centers on her. But
that's Lan, played by Zuzu.
Yeah, but their father is great too, and in such a an understated kind of. It's just kind of like one of those performances that it's kind of like what I think of when I think of The Postman. It's like you've got this really understated, quiet performance that I think a lot of the reason that movie got that performance rather got singled out is because the actor whose name escapes me died the day after he finished filming it. But it's kind of the same quiet performance in this way, but it's so powerful at the same time. The dad says more the way he smokes a cigarette than the way he speaks, for example. And I just thought his dynamic and Lan's dynamic, the mother, I thought that their dynamic was great. And the way that he really didn't want them to leave, but he trusted her. He's like, you know what? Hey, yeah, I don't like this, because who would like to be split up like this? But you're right. Go find an education for our kid, and then you realize, oh, of course he knows his wife can't read or write either. Of course he knows that. I don't know. And I was glad also, I was I feel like Amy Irving needed to dial it back a little bit. I was just like, Amy Irving, let's fucking come on. You're not the lead here. But I'm glad it didn't tip toward white saviorism either. I was sort of, even though the steps it takes for Lan to get her daughter into the exclusive private school, there are a lot of steps and a lot of hoops and things like that. This movie's only 87 minutes long, and 82 of them are movie, 5 minutes are credits. So it actually is a pretty screen time wise short period of time. And so it's just kind of like, oh, obstacles cleared, we're in school now. But then the whole idea that mom really doesn't like the way that they're teaching. What's the daughter's name? Help me out. May. Thank you. I should be able to remember that, because May, of course. Why don't you remember? But the way she really doesn't like the way May is being taught, or she expects so much more than what she thinks she's getting.
Right. After three months of teaching, she's learned 5 words.
Right. But also
so she's like, that's it?
Yeah.
5 words?
But May knows how to speak English, though. I mean, May picks up English in a half a second, so.
And knows how to do computer programming.
Exactly. And she can
and graphic design. She does
this whole, and they're just no, this kid's she's just different. There's nothing wrong with her. She's just, she thinks differently from how we think. And I think probably the big barrier was the fact that it was more difficult for them to communicate with her because she didn't speak English as well at first, but now she speaks English.
Yeah.
And they know what she's doing.
And did they also just did a shitty job of explaining it to her. And that's one thing I was really curious about in watching this movie. I know this is based on the director's life experiences, but like one thing I really wanted to know if it was intentional or not was this idea of anyone who works at the school or is like like a native English speaker just communicates in the worst possible ways.
Right.
Like they don't like try to simplify what they're saying. They don't try to make it more accessible. Like especially when the principal or headmaster comes to explain that Mei Mei can get in, she just does like the worst job of explaining it to Lan in this. You're just like, you could be explaining this in a much simpler way, but instead you're just saying this in the most convoluted way possible. Of course, someone who's not a native English speaker or someone who doesn't speak a lot of English is not going to fucking understand what you're talking about. Like, read the room.
Yeah. I mean, that might be, just, Americans being Americans, I wouldn't be surprised if they're just like, they have no idea that it's difficult for Lan to understand, either because of the language barrier or because of their hoity-toityness or whatever. But, it did bother me that all that was happening, but at the same time, it was like, well, of course, these people are fucking elite dopes. Of course, they're not gonna they don't have any idea. I mean, Lan can tell them what she's been through, but they don't really know what she's been through.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Okay. So I'm going to share what I think. So I'm glad that you guys liked this so much. I think I completely agree with you, Dave. I think that Lan and Chen, who is the husband, I think they're both really great. I love their performances. I was not a fan of this film, unfortunately. I think it needed stronger writing. I think it needed stronger character development and dialogue. I think some of the acting from the other actors, especially from Mei Mei, and yes, she's a child actress, but still, I think it's very stilted. I would have liked to have seen more of Mei Mei's education, especially at the Horizon School, especially before and after when Lan has an issue with the education and she's expecting more results. But my biggest problem with this film is in its ableist construction. And I found this incredibly uncomfortable the entire time watching, is that, and I get it, but Lan's obsession with her being normal, and it would have been great. And it makes sense. It makes sense because she feels abnormal herself because of her learning disability. It makes sense that she wants her daughter to be, okay. But it would have been really great. And this would show the filmmaker's perspective and the film's perspective if one person had critiqued the notion of normalcy, and that's an incredibly ableist construction and paradigm in and of itself. And instead, you have Helen Slater as the headmaster principal saying, she's never going to be normal. No one's normal here. And I'm like, oh my God, what a wasted opportunity. And it just was so incredibly frustrating. And then to me, that was just reinforced at the very end during the credits when we see a list of all the amazing people who have accomplished all of these things and who are really talented, who have dyslexia.
They were all dudes.
And they were all dudes. Yes, you're absolutely right.
You brought that up.
The other thing is, though, you don't have to be someone who is a celebrity or talented in order to deserve respect and dignity as a person with a disability. And it angered me so much. And it really pissed me off and took me out of the film and rooting for the film.
Yeah, I do agree with all that. And that's the thing. Like, I know I was sounding like I was giving it a rave review, but like, I found it emotionally compelling, but I also was noticing a lot of the flaws in the movie, especially like at the end. That really irked me too. When it's like, here's all these famous people, all of which are men that have had dyslexia. It was like, we just watched a movie about a mother and daughter. We don't have, I'm sure there's like a million women who have had dyslexia who have gone to do amazing things. And we're staring at a list of men, and not even like the most compelling list of men. It's like Tom Cruise was there. Like, really?
But here's the thing. You shouldn't need to be I totally agree. But at the same time, you also don't need to be touting a list of, see, these are all these amazing things. So see, dyslexia is not so bad. See, they're normal, quote unquote. Right. It's like, no, that's the completely wrong message about a learning disability.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it should be focusing more on the stat that they do before that about how 1 in 10 people has dyslexia. It's like, it's common. Like, this is a common thing, people. And, you know, many people with the right education and identification can get what they need and to be successful.
And whatever does successful means to you, P.S.
Right.
You know.
Thank you.
Yeah, I want to echo Evan's sentiments. It probably sounded like I was giving it a rave review. I was more compelled by just the family, the 3, mom, dad, and Mei. I also agree with you, Megan, by the way, that Mei's performance is not great.
Ugh, thank you.
Well, it's just that kind of acting that little kids do, and I don't know if it's because they can't act or if it's because this is how they're directed, but the kind of like where everything is like, oh, it's like she's a it's like she's a 6-year-old version of Rachel on Friends, you know?
Right. Oh, poor Rachel.
Yeah.
Rachel.
But you know what I mean with the
I do. No, I know. But I think the thing of it is I've seen way too many great child performances that I have no tolerance for shitty or mediocre child performances because they are out there. There are good child actors out there. Now, granted, maybe she was the best in regards to a child who was bilingual. I don't know. Yeah. And I definitely think her acting is much better when she's speaking in Chinese.
Right.
So that could also have something to do with it, to be fair. I think the good things about this film, I do agree with you guys. Like, there are some really fascinating parts as far as like the family dynamics and the fact that, you know, that Lan has to come all this way because, you know, if this is still correct, China doesn't have any programs for dyslexic students. That's ridiculous. Like, that's just appalling. So that's fascinating. The fact that she has to work so many jobs, the fact that she's an immigrant, the fact of all these, you know, ridiculous hoops that she has to jump through. That's all fascinating, at least for me in theory. But to me, it just didn't all come together because there are all these other issues and problems and flaws.
Well, and also one other thing I wanted to point out, one of the places where Lan works illegally because she's, you know, an undocumented immigrant, I don't know, it's a textile. She's sewing. And the guy who runs it is like, I can't write a letter of recommendation because then I'm admitting that you're here, that I've hired illegal workers. And then he's like all concerned about it. And then he goes ahead and writes the letter anyway. And then we never hear about it again. There's things like that where I just like, this is such a major concern of this character and a focal point of this movie. And the movie hinges on, is he going to write the letter? Well, fucking of course he is. But like, you know, then it never, then it's like
to him, oh, it's just going to go to the school. Like no one else is going to see this letter.
Yeah, sure. No one else is going to see this letter when we apply for our federal funding. You know, even though we're a private school, they all still get federal funding. So yeah. Anyway, whatever. I don't need it. Fuck it. I don't need it. I liked it more than I didn't like it. I'll end it there. That's where I'll end it.
Evan, do you have any final thoughts?
No, I feel like we covered it all.
Just cackling in the background.
Cackle.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, there's so many. I mean, the end credit thing though, like there's so many women who have had dyslexia who are amazing. Lucille Ball, Whoopi Goldberg, like how are we not mentioning these people in
a movie written and directed by a woman? I mean, I don't like not that I expect women to not to do all the things that you would think like that a man would think they would do, but like
no, but I do expect more.
But you don't like, I mean, how many interviews and I don't even listen to Cher that much. How many interviews has she given where she's like, I suffer from dyslexia? Like 1 million. Like Cher, one of the most famous singers ever. Anyway.
All right. Well, let's move on to our final film of the show, The Nighthouse. I feel like that's such an intense.
Yeah.
In the middle of the woods. Nighthouse.
Well, that just undermined my thought that it's an intense title. The Nighthouse.
Gonna scare you fucking bad. Nighthouse.
Very nice. Very nice.
It's where demons like to sleep. Nighthouse.
And then they're gonna eat your face. Nighthouse. Okay. I mean, they may not.
I am all for face eating, but Oh, nice musical interlude, gentlemen. Very nice.
That was like a nice duet, Evan. Thanks. Madness will be looking for their royalty check in the next couple of weeks.
Okay, back to business. Serious business. So The Nighthouse is directed by David Bruckner. It's written by Ben Collins and Luke Piotrowski. And it stars Rebecca Hall. And Rebecca Hall, who is amazing. She's always amazing.
Yeah.
She is a widow. Her husband died very unexpectedly. He built the house that they live in, that she's now still living in, on a lake. And some strange things start happening. She starts seeing strange things. She starts having weird dreams.
She develops
She starts hearing things. Yep, sleepwalking. The stereo goes on in the middle of the night, always playing the same song.
That might be one of the creepiest things in the movie, honestly.
Right? I agree. I also think the bloody footprints are pretty scary too.
Yes,
yeah,
those two.
That's creepy.
Yeah, very creepy. Yeah, so strange things are happening.
Strange
And she
things are
thinks-
happening. Sorry, that was an old ad campaign that we did at Good Morning America 20 years ago when the song was Good Things Are Happening. Anyway.
All hell has broken loose.
It is a horror movie.
Musically. That's true. It does not break out into musical interludes. Well, actually, in a way it does because the stereo goes on.
True.
So then Rebecca Hall starts digging into her husband's past and finds potentially some suspicious things. What?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Some weird
All right.
books.
Some suspicious,
from an occult
weird
murky
store.
things.
Weird books about corderas, which are Celtic mazes or Welsh mazes. Some weird things about spells, binding spells.
Mm-hmm. Some weird shit on his phone. Pictures of women who look almost exactly like her, but aren't
not
her.
quite.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah. So what did you guys think of this?
I thought it was muddy.
Oh.
But I thought Rebecca Hall was really good. I found her, unfortunately, kind of unsympathetic, but she was really good. But I think the whole, how old was she when she was in the car accident where she was dead? 17, 18? I don't remember.
Yeah.
She kind of just explains that as she's falling asleep drunk in her friend's lap one night after her husband has killed himself in the boat, and she's already had her first couple of visions of him. And of course you're like, well, this is going to come back. But I guess I never really bought the whole building the mirror image of everything and having all of the other women. I might be getting this wrong because I'm just not sure I followed it. The husband sacrificing all of the other women so that she could stay alive from that spirit that was trying to reconnect with her from when she died.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, okay, so if that was what your job was, husband, keeping the spirit away from her and sacrificing, everybody except Stacey Martin, I guess she got away in the end. The whole time I'm watching her, I'm like, why do I know who she is? And like, oh, that's right. She's in that terrible Lars von Trier movie.
Nymphomaniac.
Wait, which one?
Nymphomaniac. She's the main
Nymphomaniac.
character. Well, she's the younger version of
The younger version.
of Charlotte Gainsbourg.
Sure. Yeah.
But anyway, watching the whole thing, and then it just sort of ends, So, there were just too many things that were left dangling, and I know that the ghost spirit thing is still like kind of chilling out there in the boat at the end. But my big question is, if the husband was trying to keep the spirit away from her, did he kill himself because he couldn't handle it anymore, or like what was it? I mean, because now she's at the mercy of this thing, whatever it is. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody help me.
That's a good question. I don't know the answer. Yeah. I liked this movie overall. I think it was really creepy and atmospheric. And I agree with you though, Dave, that I'm not sure I followed all of the mythology. I don't know if it all adds up, but I do like Rebecca Hall. I do think this is just really atmospheric. There's just a lot of creepy visuals and sensations and situations
That's
that just
for sure. Yeah.
made my skin crawl. Like all the weird situations where you could see like silhouettes of
Dude,
I
what looked
loved
like
that.
silhouettes
man
were
in,
so
like,
creepy.
architecture in the house, and then
Yes.
kind of like pulling all that stuff was just very creepy. And so was like the music in the middle of the night, the footprints, like Megan, you were just saying, on the dock, the
Mhm.
weird, creepy, half-finished house in the middle of the woods with the weird,
Mhm.
fucked up doll with the nails through it. They're just with a lot.
The Louvre doll. That's a
Yes.
replica of the Louvre doll.
Yeah. But I was going
Yeah,
to say,
the-
don't forget all the like decomposing bodies under the floorboards. Don't forget
Yes!
that.
in the half-finished house in the woods. Yeah. So I don't know. I think there really was something here that I was into, and it kept my attention. It really did. I just don't. I agree with you. I'm not sure if I follow all of it. What do you think, Megan?
I loved this. I loved every single thing about this. I loved it from start to finish. I love Rebecca Hall. Like I said, I think she's always great. I think she is so subtle and so nuanced here. Especially my favorite scene with her is right in the beginning of the film where she's talking to the parent of the kid
Yes.
Hunter who got a C.
Yeah.
And she really captures the kind of, ambivalence and ennui and kind of numbness but also agitation of grief. And she's just like, oh, she's like, well, my husband just shot himself in the head. So I don't really care about your kid getting a C. So
Yeah.
I'll just give him a B. And she's like, well, that's not what I wanted. And she's like, well, what did you want when you came in here? Oh, you want an A? Here you go. Like it's
Yeah.
so
And then the mother's
incredible.
like, no, I
Great.
didn't want an A either.
Right. The mother's so uncomfortable. And I love that. And I think as the film goes on, her distress and her anger and her grief, her overwhelming, trauma, everything just pours out. And I love it. I think it's such a fantastic performance that really anchors the film. I love the production design. I love the usage of space in the house with the silhouettes. Oh my God.
Mhm.
That was just brilliant. I loved that. I loved that the score was great and heightened tension, but it was also very restrained at times, which made
Yeah.
it even more tense
Yeah.
because there is no musical cue. So you're like, shit, what's going to happen? When is it going to happen? And I love that. And I think that's great. And I wish more horror films or suspenseful films would do that. I found it really tense and unsettling. And I really loved its exploration, like I said, of grief and the spectrums of emotions that grief unearths. I don't know if everything necessarily makes logical sense when you start, deciphering everything and analyzing it. But I'm actually okay with that. I'm okay with not everything quite piecing together because I think what's there is interesting. And it makes sense that she wouldn't have all the answers or know every single thing because you can never know everything about another person or what their ideology was or what their state of mind was. Like you can have a good sense, you can, have an idea, but not necessarily everything. And I also love the ending that it just kind of ends because to me, it's a very Babadook ending. It's very much like, yes, the spirit, the malevolent spirit is still very much with her still and is never going away. And I loved that.
Yeah. I think that there are two problems. I echo what you said. The production design was great. It really was. I mean, just a great use of space and all that stuff. The two big problems I have are one, that nobody noticed anybody building this house across the lake in the woods. No.
Well,
Hey.
we don't know that. Vondi Curtis Hall very well might have, but he was keeping the secret of Owen, her husband.
Yeah,
so.
but no one else, though? I mean, it's a lake. It's not a deserted lake. I mean, it's, there's that. So, and then the other thing is, and I might be getting this wrong, and I don't think this was the intention, but the way it felt to me at the end was they were kind of circling back around to, if you hadn't died in that car accident for 4 minutes when you were 17 years old, none of this would have happened. So it's really all your fault. That's kind of how I felt.
Oh.
And I thought that was icky.
That is icky. I did not get that sense at all, but that is
I didn't
icky.
get that either.
Yeah. And
what made you get that sense? Was there something
because
specific?
she tells the story and then the ghost is like, no, we fucking were together for 4 minutes and I want you back.
That's the ghost. The ghost is fucking manipulative. The ghost
sure.
manipulated her husband too.
Sure. Yeah. But I mean, it just seemed, I don't know. I feel like if there were I just felt like it stung of sexism a little bit, probably unintentionally, but I don't know. I'm probably reading way too much into it. But this is the same guy who, his story in VHS is about a succubus and about like how funny it is that there's a succubus. So until it's not funny. So, anyway.
I have never seen any of David Bruckner's work, so I am only judging this.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that he's pretty gifted director. I just think that the stories he chooses to tell. So I think this has a lot of good working parts, and then I think it has some things that are just working against it. But I also agree that if I woke up with the stereo blasting in the middle of the night, it's kind of like that old Eddie Murphy joke where he's like, if it was a black family that moved into the house, oh, honey, I'm so glad we live here and the schools are great and the neighborhood's so wonderful. Get out. Too bad we can't stay. It's just like the moment the stereo turned on, I would have been like, I'm getting the fuck out of here. Last week, Ted set the alarm on my clock and I didn't know it. And it woke me up at like 12:05 in the morning and I thought I was going to die. So,
so you can relate.
Yeah. And they weren't here. It was like, they were sleeping somewhere else. So I was just like, it took me a moment. I was like, okay, he was fiddling around with the clock yesterday. Now I remember, of course, was he fiddling around with the clock or did I just invent that scenario? So, okay. So I get all that. But like, this is also another thing where, and my thing about horror movies, like the more things get explained to me, the less scary it becomes to me. And I felt like, because you guys remember when I was first watching this for the first 20 minutes or 30 minutes.
Yeah, you were texting us that you were scared.
Yeah, I was texting you guys being like, this fucking movie, I can't take it. No. And then, but then everything sort of gets explained. You're like, oh, all right, well, now it's going to resolve itself somehow.
Yeah, and see, I don't have that issue. Like it does something, whether it's, and things don't usually scare me, but like as far as like, and also I don't judge horror films based on how scary they are, because then I would never like any horror films for the most part.
That's fair.
But yeah, but and also, I mean, that's a whole other discussion debate we can get into, because to me, that's also not what defines horror. It's exploring fear, but it doesn't mean it has to make you scared. But anyway, I digress. But yeah, but I do know what you mean about the explanation. But that did not detract from my feelings of the film, and as far as how intense I felt about the film or the world of the film. What I will say is that this film really reminded me, especially in its kind of action scenes and its invisible terror, very much of The Invisible Man, and like how she's being choked, how she's being moved around by an invisible malevolent force.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it definitely was reminiscent of that.
Yeah, true. In other words, I agree.
I knew what you meant.
Not nearly as violent as The Invisible Man.
No, thank God, because that was a very triggering experience for me.
Yeah, I was going to say kind of mercifully. I don't know if I mean, the older I get, the less on-screen violence I need to see. Except for the head through the bread slicer in Fear Street Part 1, 1994, which was amazing.
That was great. I will say, it's interesting that you talk about sexism, Dave, because I have to say, I kind of got the vibe very early on that I was like, oh, the husband is going to be abusive to other women. And ding, 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 he was. And I'm glad that a lot of it is more alluded to rather than very graphically displayed.
Mm-hmm.
I was appreciative of that.
Yeah. I also had trouble buying the conceit that she never would have noticed all of these affairs, just because as many women as he seemed to have killed, he would have been out of the house a lot, man.
That's very, very true. The one thing I will say that bothered me about the film, thinking of that, is she makes an offhand comment about her depression and how she's the one who had dark thoughts and she's the one who struggled with depression and he kept them at bay. And I'm like, that's not how depression works. And I'm like, that's extremely codependent. But anyway.
Yeah, and you're right. That might not be how, that's not how depression works. But either the filmmakers / screenwriters don't understand that, or maybe she doesn't understand. Maybe her character doesn't understand it. I mean, there are people who are depressed who don't know they're depressed. I mean, so
no, but she knows she's depressed. But the fact that but the fact that she thinks it's her husband who can control it, like that's ridiculous. But yes, but it would have been nice if one of her friends was like, maybe you should talk to a therapist.
Yeah. I mean, she did have the one friend who was like really looking out for her, who was a big part of the beginning of the movie and the end of the movie. And then for the middle 70 minutes, it's like, hey, what happened to the blonde woman? But
I love that her friend is the one who saves her.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. That was actually, I was a little worried for a hot second that they were both going to drown in the lake. But then I was like, no, they're not going to bring us this far and then drown them in the lake.
I was worried about that.
I think my only like serious complaint in an actorly standpoint is more Bondi Curtis Hall, please. Like if you're going to cast him, why not have him in like at least twice as many scenes as he was in? So,
I agree with that.
Whatever.
Because he is always great. And
he's so great. So underused. So,
oh
well.
Agreed. Underused here in this film and underused in all films. He needs to be in more.
Yeah. Oh, well.
Did you guys have any final thoughts?
I did not.
Evan?
No, I think we covered it.
Yeah. I have a lot of just mixed feelings about it because a lot of it worked for me and a lot of it didn't. That's all. But
that's totally fair.
I think I got into it pretty heavily. So there you go.
All right. Well, let's do a recap then and tell you where you can see these films. So Demonic is going to be opening in theaters today, and on August 27th, it will be on VOD. What do you guys say? Would you say see it, skip it?
If you came this far, I think you know how I feel. Don't just skip it, delete it. There's that.
Ouch. Yeah, I'd also say skip it.
I would also say skip it. Okay, so Confetti. Confetti also opens in theaters, and I think it is on VOD as well. Do you guys know? Any chance?
I believe it is on VOD also, but don't.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
All right, and would we recommend it?
Yeah, if you skip all the parts that don't involve the family together. No, I'd say see it anyway.
Yeah. I'd say see it. I think there's something emotionally compelling here. Plus, it's really not a big time commitment, as Dave said. It's under an hour and a half, so it's not like you're sinking that much time into it.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know if I would say see it. I think you might be able to skip it, but just because the ableism just really, really bothered me. But Zuzu as Lan is so good, might be worth it just to see her performance.
Yeah.
But be prepared. Okay, and The Nighthouse, which is opening in theaters.
Yeah, sure.
Evan?
Yeah, I'd say it's worth seeing. It's creepy. It's atmospheric. I liked Rebecca Hall. I think there's something here. If it doesn't quite, for me, together in the end.
And like I said, I loved it. I loved Rebecca Hall, so I would definitely say see it. Okay. So we want to give a huge, huge thank you to our amazing editor, Otto Clammer. Otto makes us sound great each week. So thank you so much, Otto, for everything you do.
Thanks,
Otto.
You can find Spoiler Piece Theater anywhere you get podcasts. We are everywhere. And you can find us at our website, spoilerpiece.com. You can find us on social media. Come follow us at all of the social media places. We're Spoiler Piece Theater on Facebook, and we're at Spoiler Piece on Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, and TikTok. Come say hi to us on social media. You can also reach out to us via email. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear your comments. What do you think? Did you love these movies? Did you not? Agree, disagree? We want to hear it. We love to get your feedback. And you can email us at spoilerpiece@gmail.com, or you can call us
at 862-21-PEACE.
Leave us a voicemail message. Text us. We love it all.
Yep. You can text us.
I think that's so cool for some reason.
Yeah.
And if you like the show, please consider rating and reviewing us by going to ratethispodcast.com/spoilerpiece. You can also rate us at Apple Podcasts That really helps us out a lot. It gets the word out about the show. So thank you. If you have left a rating, thank you so much. And if you really, really like the show and you're not a patron yet, consider joining our Patreon. This week, we talked about the Bette Davis classic film, All About Eve, and we put out weekly bonus episodes for our patrons. We also do polls that you can vote in. So it's great. We have a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
So my name is Megan Kearns. I'm a contributor for Edge Media Network, a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association. You can follow me on Twitter at OpinionSWorld and on Instagram and Letterboxd at TheOpinionS.
My name is Dave Riedel. I write about movies. I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association. You can follow me on Instagram, Letterboxd, and Twitter as Dave Sees Movies.
And my name is Evan Crean. I'm co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association and co-author of your 80s Movie Guide to Better Living. You can follow me on Twitter, Letterboxd, and Instagram as Real Recon, and that's real as in film reel.
So thank you so much, patrons. Thank you so much, listeners, for listening, and we will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.